talk to so many friends who say, Ragtime is so timely. I'm so glad you're directing it right now. So I think there was something special about us doing it in an election year, in a year where immigration is an incredibly charged topic, in a summer where, you know, Black Lives Matter is you know, tragically relevant. I think Ragtime is beyond relevant always, but there are so many ways that, in particular this year, it should be in the public view. We basically applied to the National Park Service for a license, I think almost 2.5 years ago now, and figuring out how to stage something in a room like that is so historical kind of allowed us to have really special moments, I think, in the piece where we were acknowledging and saying, you know, we're here, we're on Ellis Island.
That to me is so shockingly relevant, you know, not only now, almost 20 years after it opened on Broadway, but it's also so relevant for the over 100 years after the story is actually set.
You know, Ragtime deals not only with the immigrant issue, it deals with the racial issue in this country, the issue of women's rights. It's essentially the story of 3 families trying to pursue their version of the American dream. And each of those families has a unique obstacle. In the mother's case, it's the obstacle of being a woman who's supposed to be subservient and have all of her thoughts given to her by her husband. In the case of Tata, it's the immigrant trying to get to a new place and make a better life, fleeing from trouble and destruction in the pogroms of Eastern Europe. And in Kohlhaas Walker's case, the black man dealing with the deep-seated racism in this country. And, you know, it would be lovely to think that a story that takes place in 1906, we have transcended those things. But we are still dealing with these issues on a massive scale today.
When I was a sophomore in college, I directed a production of the musical Violet on a moving bus, and really got me turned on to the form of site-specific theater. And I started thinking about what else could be done in that form with musical theater and site specificity, and basically made a list of my favorite musicals that could be performed site-specifically, and Ragtime, paired with Ellis Island, was on the top of that list. There are infinite challenges of working in a space like Ellis Island. The biggest challenge that we encountered was sound. The hall is built with these incredibly beautiful red brick tiles that basically complicate sound in the space to an enormous extent. And it's not built for theatrical performance.
When you bring an audience to a site where they have never seen a theatrical piece before, the audience is already asking a lot of questions about what is going on, why are we here, why should this be here, how am I supposed to interpret this? And I really appreciate being able to reset an audience's frame of mind, because normally when an audience member walks into a theater, maybe they've seen some shows before, they more or less know what they want to expect from it and what they want to get from it. But when you bring them somewhere like Ellis Island, or when we did Violet on buses, an audience member doesn't necessarily know what they're going to get out of it, and I think it creates this fresh level playing field for everyone to have their own new experience of a story they may know, but in a new way.
In Harlem, men and women of color forgot their troubles and danced, and reveled to the music of Kohlhaas Walker Jr. This was a music their own and no one else's.
One young woman thought Kohlhaas played just for her. Her name was Sarah.
It was kind of magical going out to the island, first we got on the ferry and they took us by the Statue of Liberty. What was great about that was when I had done the role on Broadway, as the character of Tata is coming into New York, he and his daughter, the little girl, are standing on a boat looking out during the number Journey On, and I used to imagine every night that we were seeing the Statue of Liberty right before we went to Ellis Island. So it was kind of great to get on this boat, go by the Statue of Liberty, and then come to Ellis Island to actually do the concert.
Here in America, anything you want, you can be. Here in America. Do what you do, and the world will come to you guaranteed.
It's a place where the history is very palpable. I mean, if you stop and think for 1 second about what happened there and how many people came through that island, and not the wealthy, because the wealthy got to go straight to Manhattan. So the poor immigrant, the poor huddled masses, would come through Ellis Island all in the hopes of making a better lives for themselves.
Come meet the artist, big shot, oh yes, red, white and blue, hooray and God bless, I'm a success, I'm a success, success, success.
Instead of pretending to look out and see the Statue of Liberty, you could see the literal Statue of Liberty. It amplifies all of the emotions and all of the feelings that are coursing through myself as the character.
I promised you America, and little one, we will find it.
Because the musical is, first of all, this glorious painting of America at the turn of the century, but also, includes these stories about immigration and the American dream, which lives so naturally at Ellis Island. That pairing kind of just jumped off the page to me, and to be able to work with Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty, the geniuses and heroes of mine, who created this beautiful musical, was incredible.
His head was spinning.
People said and taught my friend, unions broken and why for children laboring, women still enslaved. Leave your little backyard, my friend, there are causes to die for. Stop.
In the gutters of the city, I have tried to find some meaning in the arms of fallen women, in the thought of suicide. Like a firework, I'd exploded, wanting life but never knowing how.
My brother, life has meaning, I'll show you how. My brother, you are with us now.
He was calling out her name, shouting what he did not know, and he found that he was standing on a chair with a heart as clean and new as the freshly fallen snow.
When we put together the song list, we realized that it wouldn't make sense to try to put the songs in chronological order in the show, because we would end up with a truncated version of Ragtime, which is really just not what the authors intended. Instead was created groupings of 12 songs that touched on different themes in Ragtime. So we realized we really need some connective tissue and narration to string this together. And wouldn't it be amazing to have a narrator who can actually speak to the relevance of Ragtime? So we thought, well, let's just reach out to Brian Stokes Mitchell and see what he says.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. How are you tonight?
The way that we put together the narration was, he called me. We had an hour-long conversation about his experiences with Ragtime and what our set list was, and then we took bits out of that conversation and stories and wove them into narration that went in between the songs.
So now we will turn our attention to two characters who seek freedom to ensure a bright future for their baby boy as they confront racism and bigotry. In this next song, these two young parents sing of the hopes that they have for their child's future.
That was one of the most special parts to me, to be, working with the original Kohlhaas Walker, to craft how to introduce people to this story or reintroduce people to this story.
Well, when he is old enough, I will show him America, and he will run of a dream.
When we first began work on Ragtime in 1995, it was apparent that many of the issues that Sarah and Coalhouse encountered were still issues almost 100 years later. Now in 2016, that struggle still goes on. But movements like Black Lives Matter and shows like Ragtime remind us that we must continue to seek a way forward and speak up against injustice. We must move beyond our differences. This is the power of the theater and the promise of our country, so beautifully evident here on Ellis Island.
The great possibility of getting together a team who's excited to do things like this, and in some ways we were surprised to learn that yes, we could do this concert, and it happened and people enjoyed it, and it went relatively smoothly, and I think we learned that this kind of thing is possible. Sammy did a lot of research in the early stages to figure out how do you do anything on Ellis Island. I think we were working with Ellis Island for about 2 years leading up to August 8th, 2016, when we had the concert. And every step of the way was a new question of where is the backstage? Are there dressing rooms? What is sound like in this massive hall? So it was an ongoing process of figuring out what does theater look like in this space that has not been used for theater before.
We'll never get to heaven till we reach that day.
I think working with a young director is always very exciting because where a more experienced director has come up against things and might already feel like we can't do this or we can't do that, young directors tend to think they can do anything. And it's really thrilling to work with someone who thinks nothing can stop them.
I've never run a room of 47 actors before, and that was daunting, let alone running a room with Tony and Olivier Award-winning actors in it. And they just kind of came to the table and said, we trust you, we're willing to take this, leap of faith and just go for it. And to a young director, that is the most amazing gift.